Some recordings are so disturbing, they're locked away forever. Remnants of crimes too horrific for the public to ever see. As even a brief haunting glimpse of something so jarring, so deeply unsettling, feels like a stain on human history that refuses to be washed away. In this series, we're digging into recordings of events that never should have happened, preserved not as entertainment, but as evidence of some of the most shocking true crime cases, the memories of which can never be erased. Because once you've seen them, you'll never unsee what humanity is capable of. This is Volume 1 of the most disturbing lost media. Viewer discretion is advised. Our first case takes us to March 9th, 2001. The small German village of Rotenburg, a quiet place where nothing extraordinary ever happened. Until the night two strangers met to create footage so disturbing that it would haunt those who viewed it for decades. That night would end in horror, but it didn't start there. Rather, it started with a single post on a website that blurred the line between fantasy and reality. In the early 2000s, as the internet expanded into its darkest corners, a site called Cannibal Cafe became a meeting place for people sharing their most disturbed fantasies. Officially, everything was labeled fantasy only, but in early 2001, one post shattered that illusion. A user calling himself Frankie wrote, "I'm searching for a young man between 18 and 25. If you have a normal body, I'll butcher you and eat your flesh." It was disturbingly simple, direct, and it sat in that digital cesspool waiting for someone brave enough to respond. Someone did. Days passed. Most who replied eventually backed out when reality set in. But one response was different. Bernd Brandes, a 43-year-old computer engineer, didn't want to consume. He wanted to be consumed. And he had one chilling condition. It had to be filmed. Over the course of dozens of increasingly graphic emails, the two men carefully planned what would become one of the most infamous recordings in criminal history. In the coming days, the two men met at a train station and from there drove to Meiwes' house in Rotenburg. Once inside, Brandes walked straight into the living room and undressed, according to Meiwes, so that he could admire his dinner. Brandes next made a request that defies rational comprehension. He wanted his male part removed and consumed, and they were to share this final meal together. But the execution of this plan, well, let's just say it proved to be unsuccessful. But this was just the beginning of a very long nightmare. As Brandes grew weak from blood loss, Meiwes helped him to the bathtub. For the next 3 hours, as Brandes slowly died from his wounds, Meiwes sat quietly reading a Star Trek novel, occasionally feeding him painkillers and alcohol. Finally, he ended Brandes' life and kissed him on the forehead, almost as if to say goodbye. The camera never stopped rolling, and what happened next would become one of the most disturbing details of the entire case. Over the following days, Meiwes methodically cut apart Brandes' remains, storing them in his freezer alongside frozen pizza and a dead rat. For the next 10 months, he continued eating from the stored remains, often preparing them as a formal dinner, serving them with princess croquettes, Brussels sprouts in a green pepper sauce, and a fine red wine, all while documenting the meals online. But here's what he didn't expect. Someone was watching. By December 2002, another Cannibal Cafe user reported Meiwes to authorities. Police raided his home and discovered something that would change German law forever. A single VHS tape, 2 hours long. You see, up to this case, there were no laws against cannibalism in Germany. But what members of the court were about to witness would change everything. The courtroom was completely cleared. No journalists, No public observers. Only the judge, legal teams, and psychiatric experts remained. What they witnessed changed them in ways that are difficult to imagine. Some suffered lasting psychological distress, trauma that extended far beyond the courtroom. Several continued therapy long after the trial concluded. Legal professionals who had spent decades reviewing the worst evidence imaginable described the material as unimaginably disturbing and beyond comprehension. Only specific court officials retained access. The German legal community agreed it should never be released, not because of technicalities, but because of its proven capacity to cause severe psychological harm. And this is what makes the Meiwes tape the holy grail of lost media. Unlike content that simply disappeared, this footage sits in a government vault, sealed specifically because of its power to destroy minds. In lost media circles, it's discussed in almost mythical terms. Forums obsess over it. True crime communities call it the Grail, the one piece of footage that exists but can never be seen. Alleged screenshots surface periodically, but here's the thing. Even if they're real, you don't want to see them. The professionals who had to watch this footage struggled to move past what they witnessed. As for what remains of the so-called slaughter room, in 2023, there was one last chapter to this story. Meiwes' house in Rotenburg, which had become a dark tourist destination, was destroyed by suspected arson. Even the building couldn't escape the curse of what happened there. Now, the only evidence that remains is the sealed tape and the traumatized memories of those who saw it. The Meiwes recording represents lost media at its most extreme, footage that is so horrifying it will never again see the light of day. But if you're thinking that documented cases involving cannibalism are largely unheard of, or that instances of online predators breaking one of the most revered human taboos are rare, you'd be wrong. Because just 9 years later, across the English Channel, a different kind of predator used modern technology to research his crimes, build his dark persona, and lure his victims into an equally horrific fate. Only this time, the victims weren't willing participants. They were unsuspecting women who found themselves face to face with evil. May 21, 2010, Bradford, West Yorkshire, 1:33 a.m. A CCTV camera stares down a dimly lit corridor in a rundown apartment block, but what it's about to record will become one of Britain's most notorious pieces of lost media. In frame, a young woman running for her life, a man closing the distance behind her with a crossbow raised. What happens next exists only in police archives, locked away where no one will ever see it. The man is Stephen Griffiths, and what happens next exposes the true depths of his diabolic nature, because this attack was just the latest in a series that had been escalating for months. Before that corridor became a crime scene, Griffiths, then a PhD criminology student at the University of Bradford, was quietly preparing. Under aliases like Ven Pariah, he built a dark online persona and trawled the internet for weapons, disposal methods, and forensic techniques. He ran a site called The Skeleton and the Jaguar, a private archive displaying images associated with more than 50 notorious killers, alongside catalog photos of crossbows and other weapons. But he kept his darkest obsessions hidden from those closest to him. His girlfriend of 2 years, Zita, had never been inside his flat, until one night when he finally let her see his true sanctuary. What she found was a shrine to murder, walls covered with images of serial killers, detailed accounts of how women had been killed, shelves lined with books of mass murderers, and countless other texts documenting the methods of history's most notorious killers. Weapons were put on prominent display throughout the flat, crossbows and razor-sharp swords that he obsessively cleaned and caressed. The next day, she ended their relationship, too disturbed to continue dating someone with such obsessions. But Zita had only glimpsed part of the truth. Outside of that apartment, Griffiths was building a parallel life online, a digital trail that, even today, exists only in fragments.
Humanity is not merely a biological condition, it is also a state of mind. On that basis, I am a pseudo-human being at best, a demon at worst.
All of it forming a roadmap to murder that revealed he'd been planning this for years. And by the time that camera stared down the hallway where Suzanne Blamires lost her life, he'd already murdered 2 others. June 2009. Susan Rushworth, a 43-year-old mother of 3, disappeared after telling her mother she was going to buy medicine. The last known image of Susan came from CCTV footage showing her getting off a bus. From there, she vanished. Days after the last sighting of Susan, cameras showed Griffiths leaving his building with a bag. Police later confirmed the bag contained Susan's remains. Susan ended up in Griffiths' flat, where he killed her with a crossbow and dismembered her. The violent urges that had been building for years had finally been unleashed, and now there was no stopping them. April 2010. Shelley Armitage, a 31-year-old former student, went missing after failing to appear at a court session. Like Susan, she ended up in Griffiths' flat, but this time, something changed. Griffiths decided to document everything. He set up his mobile phone and recorded himself killing and dismembering Shelley. Police who later viewed this footage described it as exceptionally disturbing. And here's where this story gets even stranger. After the murder, Griffiths lost his phone on a train. For weeks, it changed hands, passed between civilians who unknowingly held evidence of the crimes. Some of them watched the footage. They described seeing things they could never forget, never unsee. But by the time the phone reached police, those civilian witnesses had seen something the public never will. May 21, 2010, 1:33 a.m. Suzanne Blamires arrived at Griffiths' apartment building. He had lured her there with promises of money for modeling photos, a lie he'd used before. Within minutes of entering his flat, something went wrong. Sensing danger, Suzanne ran, fleeing down the narrow corridor, with Griffiths chasing her. What happened next was captured in complete, horrifying detail by the building's CCTV system. Suzanne's desperate sprint for the exit, Griffiths catching up to her, the crossbolt fired into her head, and his casual dragging of her body back toward his flat. But then came the moment that would make this footage legendary in lost media circles. Griffiths noticed the camera overhead. He paused, stared directly at the lens, and raised his middle finger, revealing his complete contempt for society. That gesture of defiance would create one of the most talked about pieces of sealed evidence in British criminal history. But Griffiths wasn't done for the night. Just 1 hour later, he was back outside, approaching another woman who was on her way to pick up methadone. Another CCTV camera captured them talking outside the building. She agreed to walk back with him, but something made her hesitate at the last moment. She pulled away and left, unaware of how close she had come to joining the others. 3 days after Suzanne's murder, Peter G., the building's caretaker, sat down to review the CCTV footage. What he witnessed would haunt him for the rest of his life. Shaken and horrified, he contacted police immediately. That phone call set in motion the arrest that would end Griffiths' killing spree.
Are you saying that you've killed Susan Rushworth?
Yes.
And what was the other name?
Shelley Armitage.
Are you saying that you've murdered Shelley Armitage?
Yes.
And then the last one?
Susan Blamires.
Right. You say you murdered her?
Yes.
Okay, well, thanks for that, Steve, and I appreciate you telling us that, and it's important. What were you setting things on fire for?
Well, to destroy DNA, but like I say, in such a reckless, crazy manner. I can't believe, mind you, I don't know, I think, like I said, caretaker perhaps had other things on his mind, but otherwise I can't believe, you know, with the smoke that must have been billowing out of the windows. Although I did keep them shut for a while as well, so that's why I got a lot of soot all over me, and eventually I got a breathing mask on. But
So, how do you know that fire destroys DNA?
Well, to be perfectly honest, I mean, that was something I always kept meaning to check up on the internet, but it was just an assumption that, well, certainly I think the principle I operated on was, well, it certainly isn't going to enhance the quality of the evidence.
And what sort of location have you put them in? If you can't tell us where, what sort of location have you put them?
I don't know. Where a robot, where a computer would put it. You know, a rational, emotionless aberration would put it.
Why did you feel the need to kill her?
I don't know. I don't know if it was... So, just... Sometimes you kill someone to kill yourself, or kill parents. I don't know. It's like deep issues inside me.
So why did you feel the need to kill any of the girls? Fun?
I don't know. Well, I'm misanthropic. I don't have much time for the human race.
After he was taken into custody, investigators uncovered evidence so disturbing it will never be released. The uncut CCTV of Suzanne Blaemeyer's murder, mobile phone videos documenting other murders, and crime scene photographs used to build the case. Investigators also recovered body parts from the river Aire, evidence that, combined with Griffiths' own statements, fueled the cannibal narrative. In interviews, Griffiths reportedly told police he had eaten parts of his victims, sometimes raw, sometimes cooked. Those admissions, echoed in media and court records, cemented the Crossbow Cannibal label. To this day, none of it has been released to the public. What we've seen are fragments, the sanitized moments before and after, carefully edited to remove graphic content. The rest exists only in evidence files and in the memories of those required to view it. When Griffiths first appeared in court, he embraced the notoriety he'd cultivated online, introducing himself as the Crossbow Cannibal. It should be noted that more often than not, most serial killers are branded with their monikers by the media, but not with Stephen. He was the center of his self-made universe and relished in his infamy. He pleaded guilty to all 3 murders and received a life sentence. There was no trial, no drawn-out legal proceedings. The evidence was overwhelming, but while it secured justice, it also ensured the complete story would remain hidden. The footage that convicted him, along with the digital footprints he left behind, preserves acts too graphic for public release. They serve their purpose in the justice system, then return to the darkness of evidence storage, where they'll remain indefinitely. And that's the paradox of the most disturbing lost media. It isn't always missing. Sometimes, it's locked behind evidence tags and court orders, guarded by the memories of those who saw it, so we don't have to. We can trace the outlines. The rest belongs where it is, left in the dark. And so, we'll end it here for now. Let me know if you'd like to see Volume 2 of the most disturbing lost media. And as always, thanks so much for watching, and until next time.